Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast. We're coming to you live from Abuja, Nigeria. It's the 16th Nigerian Economic Summit Group conference that's currently taking place. Right now, we're in a forum with the governor of the central bank and also the head of the Nigerian Securities Exchange and also Commission, and also the head of the Pensions Commission, and also the head of the National Insurance Commission, discussing questions around coordinating strategies for effective supervision of the financial system in Nigeria. Before the break, we were discussing developmental strategies to make sure that the capital markets help to engineer better investment in the Nigerian economy, making it a lot more productive. Fola, Daniels, let me get your perspective here. You were saying earlier on that, Nigerians don't buy insurance. It's not a priority. But nonetheless, safety nets need to be created one way or another. Retirement savings is one issue, but also life insurance, products for business, all sorts of other things. What are you doing to try to make it more attractive, to try to develop this market?
I think the major issue of penetration or lack of penetration is awareness. The general populace have very low awareness of insurance, and there's also the perspective, the negative perspective. People look at insurance as an entity that collects money and they don't pay. We are trying very much to do away with those negative perceptions, because insurance, as a matter of fact, the last 10 years have gone quite miles away from not paying claims, and we are trying to create huge awareness. We are using a platform, a developmental platform of the Commission, which is called MDRI. First of all, to look at compulsory insurances as a way of deepening insurance penetration and purchase in Nigeria. And in our statute, we have 16 compulsory insurances, and we are creating huge awareness. We believe that if we create awareness, people will have better understanding to purchase. For instance, there is a law that says all public buildings must be insured. It's an act of parliament enacted in 2003, but most house owners are not even aware of the existence, and that's informed our MDRI project, where we need to first of all create awareness, and then we go to the realm of enforcement. And we're quite glad that some of the state governments are already leveraging on what we are doing. Lagos State just enacted another act of parliament which supports the federal act on compulsory insurances, and that is to deal with the issue of collapsing buildings. We believe that if we create awareness sufficiently, more and more Nigerians will begin to buy insurance. We have a huge population that supports an insurance industry that should thrive, that should be bigger than what it is. And what we need to do is to create awareness and also get people to be aware that insurance indeed do pay.
Okay, awareness is one thing, accountability is also another thing. One of the biggest criticisms leveled against the Nigerian insurance companies is that they're notorious for not releasing their results on time. It's very difficult to monitor and scrutinize them. They argue loopholes in the National Insurance Act. What could you do to kind of mitigate that?
Now, most of insurance companies are listed in the stock exchange, and there's a rigorous requirement about compliance with when accounts should be submitted. Most of the companies are just newly listed. So the cultural issue of delay in rendition of accounts is still with us, but we are putting it behind us. So as at now, 80% of insurance accounts have been submitted and vetted. What we're trying to do is to ensure that we send out balance sheets of insurance companies that are credible, that are trustworthy, and that will engender public confidence. But I believe that with the next 24 months, the statutory provision of submission of accounts in June is not even going to be very, very important, because most companies now know that they need to submit their account much earlier than June in order to comply with other regulatory environments.
Okay. Mr. Ahmed, still on this idea of accountability, improving systems. I mean, we said earlier on that the pension industry is fledgling in Nigeria. It's relatively young, relatively underdeveloped, still needs to be nurtured a little bit. And that's raised the question of skills, for instance. When I asked the question about why the reticence to allow pension funds to invest abroad, other experts whom we've just solicited some views from have said that, you know, there's only one fund manager in Nigeria that provides global financial services, for instance. It's a skills issue, it's an exposure issue. So just in terms of developing the market, improving on skills, what can you do?
What we have done as an industry is to collectively identify those issues, and we've been getting experts from different parts of the world, including South Africa, for instance, and we've organized various sensitization seminars. We're currently going to embark on what we call training needs analysis. As an industry, we're looking at a pension institute, basically an institute that will cater for that. We've also promoted a very strong self-regulatory organization, which is what we call the Pension Fund Operators Association, basically, and largely to work with them. We're also working with the other development partners like World Bank and DFID to ensure that at least we're able to upgrade those skills. Skills has been quite challenging, largely because of where we're coming from the banking industry. Yeah. So virtually asset management skills are non-existent. When we started as an industry, we licensed as many institutions as possible. We now realize that indeed, perhaps it's a volume business, and to that extent, very few of them seems to have been able to generate sufficient funds. And we're in the process of encouraging them to come together to share resources, whether they are skills, whether they are IT skills, with the view to ensuring that at least they provide the necessary service.
Do you want to come in there?
Yes, we do believe that the fund management industry is critical to transforming our capital markets. And so because we feel that some of what happened in the last few years, both internationally and in our own country, really had to do with skills and capacity at all levels, at the level of the regulator, at the level of the capital market operators, and at the level of investors. And we do feel that if we can institutionalize the Nigerian market, it will improve issues like liquidity in the market and will help move us forward in terms of breadth and depth. And therefore, building a strong fund management industry is extremely critical. We have a Nigerian Capital Markets Institute, which is affiliated to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we're looking at how we can transform that. We're actually working on a partnership with a world-renowned institution so that we can focus on building skills in our country. When you look at our markets, as I've previously said, versus the Brazilian market, you find, for example, that you have 500,000 investors that invest directly on the stock market and 10 million investors that invest through funds, while in our own country is actually the reverse. So there's a critical role for the fund management industry, and therefore building the skills and ensuring that the regulatory framework is in place is extremely critical.
I mean, also just in staying with this tack of developmental practices that regulators could try to encourage and enhance, many emerging market economies are talking about establishing or have established an alternative trading platform, for instance, especially for SMEs. The governor referred to the fact that earlier on that, you know, you can't support manufacturing, for instance, if it's not thriving, if you're not seeing enough manufacturing-based businesses coming to the fore. There is a fund, for instance, that has been developed for that, but then to also encourage and raise the profile of companies, a smaller exchange and alternative platform.
Absolutely essential. It's the small and medium-scale enterprises that create jobs anywhere in the world. And for our country, we must have growth that is job-led. And we must support small and medium-scale enterprises to raise funds. The exchange had indeed already applied to set up an alternative investment market, and we do feel that, and we have provided, we've authorized that, we feel that there's clearly a case for that if the capital markets has to work for our country and has to work for the citizens of Nigeria.
Okay. Okay, Governor. Let's talk about the things that I think a lot of people here want to discuss. You're not a judge, I know. You're a governor of a central bank. But you are in a position to lobby extensively for best practice, integrity, better regulation, all of these things we're discussing. There is a case, and we won't go into the details, everybody knows of it, of a bank CEO who siphoned off about $1 billion from a bank. Ultimately, she gets given a 6-month prison sentence. She gets to return the assets and keep 10% of her shares in that bank. Despite all the investigations and all the evidence to the contrary, this is how the courts ruled. And many people looking at Nigeria right now say, there's no justice. These regulations are not going to amount to anything. The system will never change.
I don't think, I mean, I've heard these criticisms, but let me first of all start, okay, by setting the facts out. The judge did not make that ruling. Mm-hmm. There was a plea bargain, mm-hmm. And I supported that plea bargain. Mm-hmm. And so I take part responsibility for it, and I'll explain why. If you go back to a year ago, when we removed the bank CEOs, the story was that they could not be removed, that no one could touch them. They were too powerful, they were too rich, they were too connected. After we removed them, the story was that it was all fabrication. It was politically motivated. There was a northern agenda that people didn't even believe that they had actually done the things and that we actually had a reason to do what we did. So from a wider systemic perspective, it was extremely important to establish incontrovertibly to all reasonable human beings that we had a reason for doing what we did, for the integrity of the process. Now, we had no doubt that we had a reason. People who know us and who know the values we stand for know that we could not have fabricated any scenario or have any agenda other than the agenda of the Nigerian nation. But it was important for the whole world to see that we had a reason. Now, we could wait 3-4 years, go through an entire legal process of a conviction, an appeal, all the way to Supreme Court. And this is a country, look, a governor won an election, and he's been contesting. 3.5 years later, the court said he won. Okay, we're about to have another election. Now, these trials could go on for another 3-4 years. In those 3-4 years, you have room for all sorts of mischief. This is the first thing. Secondly, you got assets that were bought at a cost of 121 billion naira. In 3-4 years, those assets might have disappeared. You will not find them. In every part of the world, if you have a case like this and a person is willing to agree to reduce your legal costs, okay, end the trauma for everyone, disgorge the assets and forfeit the assets that have been found, frankly, giving a lower sentence in exchange for this is part of a total deal. Okay, now if she had continued, we could have put her in behind for 7 years or 14 years after 3 or 4 years. For me, I think for the system and for the banking system to move on and for the capital markets to move on, it was important to put this matter to an end.
The system may move on, but we're going back to that issue earlier on, the question about the perceived lack of integrity. Now, I know that this is a fairly judicial process per se, even though you're saying, you know, it's a plea bargain and you've only done what you could do within the ambit of the authority that you have. But there is a sense that you've just had a crisis precipitated by unscrupulous actions of senior banking officials in this economy. You want to restore credibility in the system. The judicial process has to support the reforms that you have undertaken. It has to support it.
The judicial process has been supportive. And you know, look, let's look at where we're coming from as a country. Okay? We're coming from a history in which people who are rich never go to jail. People who are rich are never asked questions, okay? People believe that if they have enough money, they can bribe their way out of every situation, okay? We're coming from a history in which a few years ago, I would have sat with the bank CEO in my office and said to him, you know, we've looked at your books. You've stolen 200 billion. I'm chairman of the Committee of Governors. I'm chairman of governors. Look, why don't you just pay me 10% and let's sort it out? $200 million in any currency, in any account. Nobody knows about it. If the bank collapses, as is global financial crisis, and later I become a governor or a senator. This is the history we're coming from. Now we've moved beyond that, okay, to a point where no matter how rich you are, no matter how powerful you are, you know there are lines you cannot cross. It's an important first step. Now the next time, the next guy that does it goes for 14 years, okay? But for now...
Actually, the intention is that nobody tries to do it.
But I think the point, the fact that the country as a whole, okay, has made the point that no matter... And, you know, when you look at where these guys are coming from, the kind of connections they have, it is a major, major movement for the country. Secondly, look at the recovery. 191 billion naira is the highest recovery in the history of the Nigerian justice system. Yeah. And I think this is something that people need to look at as well.
You wanted to add to that?
Yes. I would also want to say that I've been associated with recovering dates, perhaps since 1994. And we've also had a similar experience in the late 90s when we had the Failed Banks Tribunal. But one thing that is certain, and we should always appreciate, conviction is conviction. If one is convicted, whether it is for 1 day or 100 years, he's convicted. And that is the most important thing. The second issue, of course, the governor talked about recovery. A financial institution, it needs to come out of crisis as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. If you take a normal recovery strategy, it's going to take you 10 years. Mm-hmm. By the time you recover, you will not have an institution. If somebody says, this is the money, take it, let's get this bank on stream, and then prepared to go to jail for 24 hours. Yeah. To me, that is the big picture, and that is what we should realize. And I don't think any one of us in this room would even want to appear in court, to be put in the dock, even for 1 hour.
But I think it's baffling for many people to reconcile this. Yeah. You watch what happened in the United States. Bernie Madoff went to jail. Certainly this wasn't a pyramid scheme, but you know, the repercussions are such that. And I think there is a sense that justice must be seen to be done. And we sat here with the president at this forum, and we spoke about the importance of the rule of law in Nigeria. And for any investor coming into Nigeria to invest in whatever way in this economy wants to get a sense that the system works, the laws protect you. Depositors, you're concerned about.
Okay. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Okay, and now and let's talk about what's happening in the rest of the world. Yeah. Okay, the United States has spent $15 trillion to fix a banking system. Yes. Rating agencies took subprime mortgages, called them investment-grade mortgages. People put money in those things. Investment banks influenced rating agencies to give false rating. Yes. And that was at the heart of the crisis we're all in. Yes. Nobody has gone to jail for that. Yes. Okay, in Europe, it's happened, apart from France that did it after 3 years. Okay. After 3.5 years, France has jailed one trader, okay, and nobody else in the whole of Europe has gone to jail. We have removed 8 executives. We are trying CEOs. We have put one of them in jail. We're going to put more in jail. We have done more. Nigeria, okay, we have 260 people before Investment Securities Tribunal. Nigeria has done more to hold people and individuals accountable for this crisis than any country in the world.
The governor refers to the tribunals regarding what's happening within the NSC, and people are also watching you in terms of what's going to happen with the outcomes of those tribunals. And some people are saying, you know what, there's no need to dilly-dally. If there's been high-handedness on the part of stock brokerages, revoke those licenses.
I think you're mixing two issues. There are issues around ensuring that the broker-dealers in this market are fit and proper, as distinct from the issues around people who had who we've alleged have committed infractions that relate to insider dealing and market manipulation. With respect to broker dealers, and there are many of them in this room today, a lot of people would not like a broad-brushed approach to assessing the broker dealers in our markets. And so a lot of the dealers that are fit and proper also want to see that those who should not be in our markets should not be in our markets. And there is a process that we're going through to revoke licenses of those who should not be in this market. With respect to the 260 individuals and entities that we've taken to the Investment and Securities Tribunal, it's also important in a system that people have fair hearing and that there is justice. And what we're trying to do is build a world-class market in every sense of the word. And therefore, we will do the right thing in terms of making sure that people are brought to book. And the Investment and Securities Tribunal is one of the success stories of any securities market, that you have a specialized court that focuses on issues around securities. So, I mean, I think the governor has said it all in terms of our commitment as regulators to make sure that this market, the financial system, is world-class in every sense of the word.
Okay, let's take this conversation forward, starting with you, Mr. Fola. Daniel, going forward, what more needs to be done in terms of regulating the insurance industry and just getting the system at par with international standards?
Now, going forward, we are strengthening the insurance institutions. We are also enabling regulatory effectiveness and also instilling discipline in the market. And I must seize the opportunity to say that within the regulators, we are collaborating effectively. We're exchanging information. The fit and proper the exercise we do on personnel, insurance MDs and directors, is an information we circulate effectively within ourselves, so that we don't have a situation where someone had committed aberration in his stock exchange and is coming up to set up an insurance institution. Right. So going forward, we are reinforcing effective exchange of information.
Right. Going forward, Governor, people are wondering what's going to happen in terms of those bidding for the rescued banks, mergers and acquisitions that we're likely to see?
I think I've already gone public to say that in a few weeks you're going to start seeing cautionary announcements. In a few weeks we're going to see AMCON purchase non-performing loans. I think that's going to happen in the next maybe 3 weeks max. So in terms of good news coming out of the market, we're going to see a lot of good news in the next 4 to 5 weeks. I believe we've reached advanced stages, and in about 5 or 6 of the big banks, we should be able to announce that they are in exclusive negotiations with partners. Now, whether we announce the names of the partners or not depends on how close we are to a deal. And the final process obviously will go through regulatory approval and shareholder approval. So that we hope to close by the end of the year. In terms of fixing and the banks and putting this behind us, I don't think we're going to go long beyond December 31. That the target was September 30. There have been delays, but we think by end of this year we should be through. But then that is when the real work begins. The work of looking at the central bank itself, looking at the skill sets, looking at what went wrong within the central bank and what needs to be done to make sure it doesn't happen again as a regulator. The work of building the systems within the banks on an ongoing basis, risk management systems and governance, and the work of continued engagement with the government and with other parts of the economy. The only thing I will say is that we've done our bit in the banking system and the capital market is doing its bit. But the problems we're dealing with are symptomatic of a wider national problem. And it's important not to leave here with the impression that the bankers and the stockbrokers are the only people who are responsible for this perception of Nigeria as a bad and corrupt society. We've got to go into things like the petroleum industry. We've got to go into things like the power sector. We've got to go into things like the civil service and the political class. We've got to clean up the entire country if we're going to attract investment.
Going forward?
I only see opportunity. I do think that the crisis, both globally and in our country, has created an opportunity for people to understand the value of regulation, for us to learn from the past. And at the Securities and Exchange Commission, we're ensuring that we're laying the foundation for a capital markets that works for the country, that works for the individual citizens of this country, and that makes sure that Nigeria is the preferred destination for any investor. We're determined, and we have, beyond the support of the administration, I think we have the support of the Nigerian people, because it affects us individually as citizens of Nigeria if we don't have a world-class market. I mean, money doesn't decide that, oh, you know, I'm Nigerian, I love Nigeria, and I'll keep, the money will remain in Nigeria. It'll go where it's safe and where it will get a reasonable return with safety.
And I think, I mean, we did speak earlier on about the fact that there's a forensic audit underway. You still have to wait for the results, etc. But people are almost looking for some sort of a guideline, a timetable as to when we're going to see a new council for the NSC. I mean, it's a transitional structure at the moment.
No, we've made it clear that the selection process for the executive management team is ongoing. We're happy with the process, and we hope that by the beginning of next year, that there will be a new team in place to run the exchange. Both the interim head of council and the interim administrator are keen themselves to transition. We at the SEC are quite delighted with the work that they've done in terms of making sure that the marketplace continues to evolve, that the transformation agenda of the exchange evolves well. They're working on a trading platform that will clearly be the trading platform for the kind of market, a larger and much more robust market that we expect going forward.
Okay, great stuff. And Mr. Ahmed,
we can't have it better than now. As an industry, we have a very strong regulatory framework, both for the banking industry and the capital market and insurance industry. And therefore, what we'll continue to do is continue to emphasize those basic core issues in the industry: corporate governance, risk management, and of course, to grow the size of the market. This is a market that is growing, and we hope Nigerians will eventually sign on to this new scheme. One of the challenges we have is the fact that today we only have 4 million Nigerians, and by estimate we're supposed to have about 40 million. Of course, is an estimate, but the governor of Central Bank talks about the economy. If the economy is not strong, there will not be jobs. If there are no jobs, people will not contribute. So we hope gradually these various initiatives that have been put in place would assist the pension industry to grow.
Okay, and a final comment from you, Governor, before we close the program. Beyond the CBN and all the regulations and reforms, it's just the growth strategy for the Nigerian economy. We're told statistically this economy is growing above 7.7%. Infrastructure a major impediment, but a vision that this government has to make this a G20 economy with higher GDPs within the next 10 years. Feasible, reasonable ambitions and targets?
Well, I mean, I always say that it's always important to do the right things and take the right steps today. There are binding constraints to growth, and these have been identified. The infrastructure constraint is there, the human capital constraint is there, and of course the whole issue of improving the investment environment and providing the right incentives for investments. Certainly on the power side, which is a major area, the government has taken the right steps, and we do hope that those steps will continue. There's still things that need to be done. We're paying a lot of money on petroleum subsidy, and that has stopped the building of refineries, and that has meant we continue to import petroleum products, and that is putting pressure on foreign exchange. We've got to look at that aspect of the economy. We've got to look at technical and vocational education. But beyond that, in terms of focusing on high growth areas and the low-hanging fruits, improving agricultural productivity, and building the value chain in agriculture, the government seems to have a very clear vision of what needs to be done. Now, what is important is to follow through with that vision. I think we can grow in double digits very easily. I've always said that. I think it is not difficult, but I think we do need to have consistent implementation of policies, and the outlook for me is very positive.
All right, speaking in unison, there was the Director General of the Nigeria Insurance Commission, Fola. Daniel, thank you very much for being with us. We also have Mr. Mohammed Ahmed, the DG of the National Pensions Commission. Thank you very much for being with us. Arunma Oteh, the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Thank you very much. And the fiery Malam Lamido Sanusi, the governor of the Nigerian Central Bank. Thank you very much. You've been watching a special broadcast that's coming from the 16th Nigerian Economic Summit Group. We've been discussing issues around regulating the financial and capital markets in Nigeria. The country's made headlines for all the wrong reasons recently, but as the governor says, all of these actions, however sensationalized by the media, are bold steps to change a rotten system at the core. And as the country changes, as the country starts to embrace a new way of thinking, so the regulators are going to ensure that those that will catalyze growth and development in this economy are going to be responsible and accountable to the people, to the Constitution, and to a new way for Nigeria.